Well, welcome everybody and good day. My name is Eric Wildermuth with Servion. Thank you so much for joining our webinar today. We've got a wonderful session planned with Tim Savage. Tim is a recognized fraud, authentication, and identity expert. Our topic today is the evolving landscape of contact center fraud. We will discuss the latest trends and countermeasures in the marketplace. Our agenda is our goal for the session is to make it very interactive. So please feel free to ask questions in the chat window. We're going to start the webinar by understanding the ever-changing landscape of contact center fraud and the need for advanced prevention solutions. Next, we will also discuss how to integrate Nuance Gatekeeper into your existing contact center operations. We will then discuss real-life use case scenarios that highlight the benefits of biometric security solutions. And then lastly, we'll wrap it up with Q&A sessions that are put within the chat window throughout the webinar. So before we jump in, just a few house rules. You will be muted throughout the session, but as I mentioned, please feel free to ask questions in the chat window on the right side. We will answer all those questions at the end of the webinar. Also, you will receive a web recording of the webinar and slides post the event. So before I hand it over to Tim, I wanted just to spend a few minutes on who Nuance and Servion are. We have a partnership that spans over 11 years. As many of you know, Nuance is a recognized leader in conversational AI, speech, and biometric security solutions. And for over 20 years, Servion's focus has been solely on customer experience. So we have deep expertise, thought leadership, and certified technical resources to guide, implement, and deploy Nuance's solutions. The combination of Servion and Nuance's global relationship aligns with helping organizations solve many of the challenges faced in contact centers today, and more importantly, can build measurable outcomes by leveraging AI for secure engagement solutions. So with that powerful combination of Nuance and Servion, please allow me to introduce Tim Savage. We are fortunate to have an industry security leader with us today. Tim is head of fraud nexus at Microsoft Nuance. He's a seasoned fraud authentication identity expert with over 20 years of experience within multiple industries. Tim is a key resource that organizations can leverage, which are looking to assess, operationalize, and provide options for their solutions to counter existing and emerging threats. And for myself, again, my name is Eric Wildermuth. I am responsible for sales at Servion. I have a deep expertise and background in customer experience and helping organizations leverage solutions such as Nuance Gatekeeper to improve its overall customer experience. So with that being said, Tim, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Eric, for the warm introduction, for inviting me here today to speak to the audience. And again, thanks to the audience as well for taking the time to join this webinar. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is really how biometrics and specifically voice biometrics can improve contact center experiences, both for customers as well as contact center agents, to basically have lower operational costs and to improve their fraud controls. So let's just jump straight into it. So based on the average consumer, they're looking for a fast, frictionless, and consistent experience. They want to feel recognized, they want to feel welcomed, and they want to feel secure. They're even, for example, just one bad experience can mean that you can lose this customer and they will go elsewhere for a better experience. So how do we create this experience using voice biometrics? And this is by authenticating based on who they are. So this is, we collect their voice in the contact center, in an IVR, in a digital app, in a web, and we're able to compare it to a voice print that they have previously provided to ensure that we are talking to the right customer. And I know that the overall messaging or topic for this discussion is fraud, but keep in mind a secure authentication means that this account is protected and fraud cannot occur. So authentication and fraud are two challenges it's two different ends of the same problem. And again, they go hand in hand. So do keep this in mind. It is fraud and authentication are directly related, and a properly authenticated customer is a protected customer. So how does this actually work and what are the benefits? So the benefits are actually very easy to understand. It's an easy, fast, and secure interaction. With as little as 2 seconds of audio, we are able to verify that this is indeed the correct customer so that your contact center agents and that your customers can start servicing their needs virtually immediately. So gone are the days where you have to have a 5-minute conversation asking them things like, what's your PIN? I'm going to send you a password. What's your mother's maiden name? What was your first pet? All of this information is no longer required to be able to correctly authenticate somebody. Using voice biometrics, just their voice on their own, again, just with a couple seconds, we're able to render that decision in real time to your contact center agent so that they no longer have to interrogate the customer to make sure they're servicing the correct person. So it is easy, it is fast, and it is secure. With our depth and breadth of deployments, as well as our industry-leading technology, we have security rates upwards of 99+% in terms of making sure that it is indeed the right person. And this isn't just fast and convenient for customers. This is also fast and convenient for agents and contact centers. Just in terms of the employee experience of no longer having to be confrontational with the customer at the top of every call, this actually improves employee work life significantly. So not only are they spending less time overall on the call servicing the customer, but they're also, not having to be the investigator every single time. And even in the emerging fraud space, where fraudsters know an enormous amount about individuals, with all the information that's available on the dark web, with all the information that is basically available for sale on the black market, the fraudsters often know the answers to all these questions. So even when the agent is asking them, this is not necessarily a guaranteed sign that they're talking to the right person. But voice biometrics can add an additional layer or be a layer on of its own to create this easy, fast, and secure conversation. So to give you a bit of a background on what Nuance has done over the last 2 decades in the voice biometric space, this is just a small list of customers, but there are over 500 plus worldwide deployments in virtually every vertical. Internally here within Nuance, we have over 300 speech scientists in our engineering, professional services, and R&D departments. There are over 600 million voice prints on our technology being used actively today, and we have about an 80% share of the global market in the voice biometric space. Finally, the last metric on the top right is in the last 12 months, we have authenticated over 8 billion customer interactions, billion with a B. This is just, again, to give you a sense of the depth and breadth of what Nuance has done for our customers. And again, this is on every continent, in almost every vertical, for a multitude of use cases. So now, what does this actually mean for a contact center agent? What does it actually look like? And it's really as simple as this. A call comes in. When the interaction starts, the audio is collected and it is verified against the customer's voice print. And here it's a deterministic decision that is made in real time that is displayed to the contact center agent. So if you just go back in terms of how the contact center agent needs to ask questions and all of that, now they simply get a green light, a red light, or a purple light. And this is all the core technology in the background that is interpreting the audio, comparing up to 1,500 unique attributes of every single caller and checking it against their enrolled voice print to say, is it indeed the right customer? If it is, the green light is displayed. If we're not able to match the customer who it is supposed to be calling in on, the second option is that we say, this is not the right customer. But before showing the red light to say that this is not the right customer, the solution can also go and check to say, is this a known fraudster? Is this a fraudster that you have already seen within your business? So we are able to render this decision. Is it the right customer? Is it the customer? Yes or no? If it's not the customer, is it somebody else? Or is it somebody who is maliciously trying to interact with your contact center? So it's really as simple as a light indicator that occurs, is as quick as 2 to 3 seconds, where they get the green, the red, or the purple light, knowing that if they actually start servicing the customer and if they have the right person on the line. So what is a voice print? This is an intricate mathematical model of the behavioral and anatomical features that make a person's voice unique to them. It's actually looking at things like how their speech patterns, they're looking at things like the size of their mouth, how, for example, their vocal cords interact with their physical features of their face. This is something that is really as fundamental as DNA, where no two individuals are the same. Everybody is unique. So here, using a deep neural network, we're able to analyze millions of different factors and features, not just of the individual, but also the background noise that is occurring on the call. And the voice print is actually not an audio recording. You cannot reverse engineer it. It does not contain PII, and each voice print is unique to each gatekeeper customer. So even if, for example, for however reason, a voice print was moved outside of the secure Azure environment to another customer's gatekeeper deployment, it cannot be reverse engineered and it will not work. Security, data privacy is of the utmost priority and concern for Nuance using biometric technology. So again, do keep in mind that this is a security is one of the first, and data privacy are one of the first layers. So again, it is not a recording. It does not contain PII and cannot be reverse engineered. And the voice print is specific to each customer. It is nearly impossible to spoof using playback and synthetic speech. So even with all the hype in the news about synthetic speech, this is not the synthetic speech that is being used or is being able to use successfully against enterprise grade biometric solutions like Gatekeeper. This is something where there's very, very robust controls against all of the stuff that we're hearing in the news. For the enterprise grade solutions, again, this is something the controls are already in place and have been in place for over a decade. There is a YouTube link here, which I can drop in the chat at the end of the conversation or at the end of this session, where if you'd like to dive a bit more into detail, but there is a 3-minute YouTube video that we can share with you that gives a bit more background on what a voice print is, as well as a nice visual asset. So again, what the voice print actually is composed of, it is speed of speech, pronunciation. So it's language agnostic. So even if you speak English, French, Spanish, whatever language, they are all the same individual, has the same individual characteristics. So it is both device language agnostic. Even things it detects like accents, it detects vocal tract dimensions. So again, the relationship of the physical vocal cords with the person's mouth. Also things like mouth shape and size. If you have a bigger mouth, you sound differently. If the size of your tongue is different, you sound different. And all of these anatomical features our deep neural network engines are able to interpret and analyze, again, with as little as 2 seconds of speech. Same thing for nasal passages. People speak, a certain amount of air goes into their nose versus their mouth. And again, all of these anatomical features we are able to pick up on. Once a voice print is created, once a customer is enrolled, you can essentially create a seamless and secure omni-channel experience. And this is really how voice biometrics has significant advantages over other biometric solutions or other biometric technologies, such as face, fingerprint, retina, where it is device agnostic. So as soon as the customer's voice, they've basically agreed to create a voice print and then they are enrolled, this voice print can be used in any channel. So it doesn't matter if they're calling from their landline, a cell phone, through an app, the same voice print can be used in any channel. It can be used in an IVR, in a web login, it can be used in a smartphone app, pretty much anywhere where there is a microphone available, we are able to authenticate with that voice print. So think of a voice print as an asset that is created. Once that asset is created, you are able to service that customer in a secure manner in any channel, basically for their lifetime. As an inherent portion of the technology, the actual voice print, as a normal person ages, as their voice changes, as for example, then when they get a new smartphone, when they get a cold, there is normal variations in a human's voice over time or due to certain factors. But the actual Gatekeeper engine actually picks up and accounts for these differences over time through a process called smart adaptation. So once a customer calls back in a second time, a third time, every single time they use their voice print, the Gatekeeper platform recognizes, is there any differences between the previous call and this call, and appends and improves the robustness of that voice print. So it is a durable asset that, again, it can be used for decades. To give you an example, some of our longer standing customers are using voice prints that are 20 years old. As the technology improves, obviously the voice prints are basically improving naturally as a part of the platform. So do think of this as a long-term asset where you can reduce call center handle time as well as enable self-service as soon as this enrollment has been created. So now both enrollment and authentication can occur in any channel. So again, we're now focused on contact center, but with the advancements of our latest biometric engines, the amount of audio required to enroll or to authenticate a customer is going down every single year. There are literally leaps and bounds being made internally with the use of generative AI to improve the accuracy and the speed of which our voice biometric technology works. So with these advancements over the last, say, 1 to 2 years, now we can actually do things like enrollment in the IVR, where if you look at our older legacy platforms, you would need someone to speak for, say, 20 seconds to be able to create a voice print. Now we are pushing the boundary, going down to as little as 5 seconds. So what this enables is enrollment in the IVR. To be able to create this secure experience, we are now able to collect enough audio from an IVR to not only verify or authenticate a customer, but to also authenticate them. So again, once this voice print has been created, it can be used in a multitude of ways, again, both in the contact center, IVR, mobile, and web. So think in terms of customer experience, how difficult is it to submit 2 seconds of audio into your smartphone? It's as simple as saying, hi, my name is Tim, and we know that we're speaking to the correct person. So again, with the advancements in the biometric technology, it is really less and less audio is required for this secure interaction, which opens the doors really to much more use cases, because again, we are no longer requiring or no longer need the customer to speak for an extended period of time. We're literally down to seconds. So here, this is just a quick demo. Sorry, it's not a demo. I don't think the audio is going to come through, but this is kind of like the workflow of how an authentication would actually work in the IVR. So this is a customer, for example, who is already enrolled. And what they do is I'm calling about a question about a recent medical bill. So again, this is a transaction where you need to make sure you are talking to the right person. There is sensitive information being interacted. So when the person is calling in, again, this is in an IVR. So this is before even the contact center. So you reach the IVR and says, why are you calling today? How can I help you? I'm calling because I have a question. So just this phrase here on its own is more than sufficient to verify against their voice print. And then what we're able to do is to render that green light or render that authentication token so that in the IVR, now they are enabled to do self-service transactions. Now you can divulge sensitive information. Now you can enable self-service transactions. Even in the case where the customer is not able to completely self-service and they say, I still need, assistance from a contact center agent. When they come out of the IVR, into the contact center agent has this green light showing to say they are already authenticated. Imagine the seamless experience and the good customer experience you can get where you're simply telling the IVR, I'm calling for a question about my medical bill, and that's all that is required to be able to make sure that we're talking to the right person. If they're able to self-serve, great. If not, when they fall in the contact center agent simply helps serving them with their need immediately. So again, think of the cost in terms of agent handling reduction time, as well as the customer service improvements, as well as the protection against fraud. So here, once the authentication is set up, even in web and mobile, so again, this is secure, device agnostic, and cross-channel. So this is where I want to talk about some of the use cases that are outside of the contact center, which are very powerful in terms of many of our enterprise customers on how they use the technology. So this is things like step-up authentication. This is things like for a high-value transaction. To give you a use case, this is there are several of our financial services customers for peer-to-peer money transfers through a mobile app. So through the mobile app, they're logging in to an app. They know, for example, this is a known device, and there are certain controls already in place. So if they want to send $500 to their friend, they're able to send $500. If they want to send $5,000, they are not able to do it unless they authenticate with their voice. So in a mobile app, it depends on the amount that you enter. $500, it's transparent. $5,000, the app will basically step you up to say, please use the microphone to verify your voice. You speak into your smartphone, it provides the authentication token, and now the $5,000 can be transferred. To give you an example, there are customers who actually use voice biometrics over and above what can be done in a physical retail branch. So you can transfer higher dollar amounts yourself using voice biometrics through a smartphone app than you're able to do in person in a branch. So again, this is really a part of the digital transformation and trying to service customers where they are, when they want to interact. And again, we're seeing the shift away from brick and mortar retail authentication setups. Same thing for logging online. So again, you might be able to log online, but again, have limited access to information. But if you want to transact, then this is when you can step up. But for this, you can also think of over a customer's lifetime. For example, people do change smartphones. So, on average, every 2.5 years, the average consumer changes their smartphone. So think if you're a financial services customer or a retail customer where you know which device your customer uses, but every 2 years, they change devices. So you lose this trust relationship with the device to be able to self-service them. And this is where voice biometrics adds that additional layer and flexibility to improve your existing controls. So when the customer gets that new smartphone and they're trying to interact, they download your app. How do you make sure that this is the new trusted device? How do you pass that confidence from their old device to the new device? You use the voice print. The voice print is centrally stored. They download the app. If they want to log in to the new device, they verify with the voice, and now this becomes a trusted device. So even the robust or the controls that exist for device-based authentication, again, consumers change their phones very frequently. So you can think that at every 2 years, there's a lot of customers who cannot benefit from this, but using voice biometrics, again, you're able to continue to use this secure device authentication by using voice biometrics to make sure it is the right person. Same things for account recovery, password resets, things like this, where there are high-risk transactions. Again, voice biometrics is a perfect use case. So you don't necessarily want a customer speaking into their phone on every single interaction or every single login, but this is how it can be used strategically from a risk perspective to have that high level of security as well as a very seamless customer experience. Another use case with the pandemic that we saw the use of our technology grow significantly in is remote worker check-in. So for example, when contact center agents, notably in North America and in Europe, but even across the world, there was a lot of people who are, very accustomed to showing up to work into an office that are suddenly working from home out of their basement. So how do you ensure from a fraud and a compliance perspective that your employee is actually still at their desk in their basement and that they have not given their credentials to a facetious or to a fraudster who is then interacting on their behalf? This is where we do remote worker check-in. It can be on every call. It could be multiple times during the call. But what we're doing is we're basically the contact center agent is speaking over the phone in a natural way. And what we're doing is collecting that audio and doing checks to say, is it actually the right employee? So the employee enrolls their voice as a voice print, and then you either systematically or strategically do checks on their phone calls to make sure that it is indeed your employee servicing that customer. Same things for step-up authentication. If you think of a CRM where there is, for example, an investment bank or any, very, very, very highly sensitive customer information, things like, social security numbers, PINs, passwords, and all of this information, you can actually hide this in the CRM until you have this authentication token. So your contact center agent is able to service them for basic needs, but as soon as they get to sensitive information, you can authenticate not only the customer, but also the contact center agent before even actually granting access to the agent to this information. So think of it there where the customer has to be authenticated before the agent actually sees the customer sensitive information. So it's literally a double verification of both the caller and the agent, really creating a very, very high level of security. Another interesting use case was actually for pension funds for proof of life. Where there is a significant amount of fraud in pension funds where the person the person is deceased or dies, but then other people continue to receive their pension checks and to keep collecting funds, and they basically fraudulently mask or try and hide the fact that somebody has recently died. So again, not only remote worker check-in, this can also be remote, pension receiver check-in, where again, they simply call into an IVR, speak for a couple seconds, and this is what enables them to continue receiving their checks to make sure that person is still alive and that we do not have, fraud where, we are sending out checks to the wrong person of somebody who is recently deceased. So in terms of how the actual fraud detection components works, there are many different features within the Gatekeeper platform. So everything up to date was really about the features about authentication. But now I'm going to dive into some of the specifics of how the fraud solution actually works. So there are many components to this that are for use for, say, fraud analysts, investigators, compliance officers. There's many different use cases of the fraud tools. The first one is fraudster watch listing. So every organization, every large organization has some type of awareness or knowledge that fraud is going on within their business. So what we're able to do is to take this insight that customers have that fraud is occurring and basically identify known bad actors or known fraudsters and blacklist them. Once they are blacklisted, any engagement in the contact center or where voice is being collected, the Gatekeeper platform systematically checks to say, is this a known bad actor? And if it is, this is where you're either going to deny the transaction, stop the transaction, or render that purple light to the contact center agent so that you can apply your own business process to, again, transfer to a fraud analyst, refer them to a branch. But again, we can deterministically identify that you're interacting with a fraudster. The second feature is backward search. So using the core biometric engine, you come across a suspicious caller. Using a simple feature, what you're able to do is to check, have I seen this person in the past? So to think of a fraud investigator or a fraud analyst, again, they get a tip, they get a complaint, they're using other tools. The victim calls in to say, something happened on my account, I'm not sure what's going on. We empower investigators and analysts to take this call and look backwards to say, where else has this individual interacted with us? So it can make a very, complex investigation or a complex analysis. We render, a black and white decision. You take a suspicious caller, you search retroactively, and we can identify that not only has this individual interacted on this one victim's account, they've also victimized 5 other people in the last week. So it not only improves the efficiency of the fraud analysts and investigators' time, but it also creates very robust controls, because once they've been identified, now this individual is basically barred from interacting with that business. Biometric clustering. So you don't even need a starting point. You don't need a tip. You don't need a victim complaint. You don't actually need anything to start looking for fraud within your contact center. You can use biometric clustering. Think of this as repeat caller analysis based on who you are. So the Gatekeeper platform can take, say, for example, the last week of calls and process them and group them together by individual. And then with the deep neural network engine, it looks at what have these individuals done, and it ranks repeat callers based on their risk. So it is normal and natural to have repeat callers. What is not normal and not natural is to have the same individual calling in, interacting on multiple accounts. And this is where biometric clustering is incredibly powerful to detect not only fraudsters, but people who are social engineering your agents, people who are trying to bribe your agents to commit fraud, as well as things like harassing customers. Biometric clustering is a very powerful tool. And voice is not the only feature of the Gatekeeper platform. We actually use conversation pattern analysis. So what this is, voice biometrics, you can think about is who is interacting, and conversation pattern analysis is what are they saying. We take language in terms of vocabulary, punctuation, specific words, how sentences are structured, and we're able to take this text-based information or insight and actually develop patterns to say, is this the same type of language that the customer has been using in the past? Is it distinctively different? So we're able to further augment the accuracy and performance of voice biometrics by interpreting what the person is saying. This is a very powerful tool for things like internal fraud, bribery, corruption, where there are certain types of phrases and certain types of language that are very rare and unheard of in a normal customer interaction. So say, for example, conversation pattern analysis is running and a caller who is interacting with a contact center agent says, I will pay you $1,000. A legitimate customer would never say this. So just basically even having like keywords or key phrases, and it is not perfect matching. There can be an enormous amount of variation. It's really about the natural language and the meaning of the phrase that we're able to pick up on. So you can think of out of the gate things like bribery and corruption. And again, these very, very abnormal high risk interactions, we're able to detect them using conversation pattern analysis. Finally, anti-spoofing. So anti-spoofing, we've all seen in the news, synthetic speech, deep fakes, voice cloning. But again, there are inherent and native anti-spoofing controls and standalone technology within the Gatekeeper platform to stay ahead of this risk. And again, just a quick call out here. I know that voice biometrics and voice cloning and synthesized speech has received an enormous amount of publicity in the last couple of months, maybe the last 6 to 12 months. But the anti-spoofing technology that Nuance has developed is almost a decade old. I think we're going on the fifth or even sixth generation of the technology. So while this is new in the news, it is not new for Nuance. This is actually technology that, again, has been a product for almost a decade. Intelligent call forensics is another feature of the Gatekeeper platform where we can actually look at the incoming calling route to generate a risk. So this is actually looking at where was the starting point, which telephony networks did it come across. We actually do live call intercept where we can actually test the call coming in to say, for example, is the number spoofed? Has the SIM been changed recently? Has the number been ported out or moved recently? All of this type of insight is looking at where is the call coming from and is the telephony route, does it look to be risky or not? So you can think biometrics is looking at the who, the conversation is looking at what are they saying, and the intelligent call forensics is where are they coming from. So these three different approaches to the same customer interaction, we are able to provide very, very high fraud accuracy rates to be able to detect and prevent fraud. I know if there's any fraud experts or seasoned fraud people on the call here, just to talk about false positive rates and accuracy rates. With a fine-tuned solution, we are able to get accuracy rates upwards of 80-90%. So think about once that you have your solution refined, your fraud analysts are operationalized. We're on the point of even automating fraud controls where you don't even need a human to make a decision. Using this multi-layered approach, again, we can have accuracy rates of upwards of 90% accuracy at identifying fraud. Something out of the box as well. So we know that customers have there's customers of different sizes. And as a part of this platform, there is a native reporting solution that comes with it. So this is really a platform where if you can think of a smaller customer who doesn't have a team of say 5, 10, 50, 100 data analysts or business intelligence analysts, as soon as you turn the solution on, you have full visibility into what is working and what is not. So there is a rich dashboard and a rich reporting tool built into the product to make sure that every customer hits the ground running and has full awareness and visibility as to how their solution is performing. This is an open environment, or this is an open platform. So we know that, canned reports or out of the box reports are not going to meet the needs of every customer, especially our mid to large customers. But again, data export API services are available so that you can consume all of the Gatekeeper data and actually use it in an external system. Such as, for example, Microsoft Power BI. Again, this is an open platform. So again, you do have out-of-the-box reporting to serve your needs immediately, but this can be expanded by exporting the data to do much more specific analytics, as well as combine Gatekeeper data with your own customer data to have even richer and greater quality reports. Another service that comes with the Gatekeeper solution is what we call Gatekeeper Launch Services, where this is a Nuance professional service offering where we have literally a whole team of people dedicated to help customers operationalize the biometric solution. Biometrics are a bit different in terms of how they're operationalized. And a lot of customers perceive this as, black magic, and it's a bit hard to understand. But this is why we not only have the technology, but we also have, the human interaction and the services available to all of our customers to help them operationalize the solution. So when it comes to working with, fraud operations teams, when it comes to working to call center management, again, we have a full team dedicated to nothing but helping the call center managers and fraud operation managers make sure that they have a successful deployment. So these are things like, how do we measure performance? How do we define success? How do you define an enrollment strategy? How do you actually convince or sell or make the pitch to the customer that they should enroll in voice biometrics? There's a lot of customers out there who are a bit skeptical of this technology. But again, we have an enormous amount of background and experience on basically how to guide your operations teams on how to best deploy this. Same things for things like advice on compliance and risk. How do you actually configure your system to protect against synthetic speech? What is the risk of synthetic speech? What is the risk of fraud? Again, we have literally a whole team of seasoned experts who can walk you hand in hand on how to use this technology as efficiently as possible, as well as things like sharing best practices. Across our customer base of 500 plus deployments, we know what works and what doesn't, what strategies work and what don't. And again, this wealth and depth of knowledge, we share this with our customers as a part of the Gatekeeper Launch Services and the Fraud Nexus program to make sure you're getting the most value out of this solution. So just a quick wrap up or a benefits overview. So it's scalable and flexible. This is hosted in Microsoft Azure environment. So again, we have customers with as little as 7 contact center agents, all the way up to say 50,000. So we have very small deployments, and it scales very, very large because of the Azure environment that we're using. In terms of IT resources and all of this, this is scalable and flexible to a customer of any size. Employee efficiency. So again, this is reducing agent handling time. We were able to shorten the interaction time between a customer and a caller by actually removing the say 1 to 2 minutes that's required on average to authenticate a customer. So we improve employee efficiency by reducing agent handling time, by giving that, deterministic green light to say you're talking to the right person. Every time we show that, it's about 1 to 2 minutes per call being saved. So especially even for the larger customers or even the smaller customers, if you can think you can save up to 2 minutes on every single interaction, this is a very, very strong ROI. Again, fraud prevention, we touched on some of the tactics and strategies of using biometrics for fraud prevention. And again, the same core technology to authenticate the customer, we're using that same technology to recognize and flag when bad guys are interacting with you. Customer experience, again, being able to enable self-service is really the way the market is going, not only to reduce your costs, but also to make their customers who want to self-serve and do not want to talk to contact center agents. Again, voice biometrics enables and empowers this. Agent experience, as I touched on at the beginning of the presentation, is that agents have an easier life when they don't have to spend 2 minutes interrogating customers. This is really a soft, it's a bit hard to put a specific financial number on it in terms of how customers can benefit this. But what we're getting back from feedback though is there's literally less call center churn, hiring and departures of agents because you simply just remove a very painful part of their day-to-day life. I mean, if you can think that, they're taking 50 to 100 calls a day, this is literally 50 to 100 less confrontations that they have to have every single day. And this improves their day-to-day life, as well as reputation. We do not want any of our customers, being in the news for fraud, and biometric controls are one of the major tactics that our customers use to avoid this. Divulging customer information, having your customers being victim to fraud, this can get out very quickly, and one bad experience can multiply to tens or even thousands of different other customers who might see this and say this is not a secure company. They their business processes are not controlled enough. So again, reputation is another way where voice biometrics can significantly improve for your business or for your customer's business. So these are some of the strengths. And again, as I mentioned at the top of the call, in terms of like market share in the voice biometric space, it is 80+%. So in terms of experience, it's really unparalleled in the voice biometric industry. Nuance is by far the leader. So we can have decades spent delivering, deploying, servicing, optimizing our biometric solutions, billions of verifications, hundreds of millions of voice prints. Again, the experience that Nuance brings to the table, and now with our being recently purchased by Microsoft, we are in an incredible position to either further push the technology and not only to continue to advance it, but also to adapt it to many more use cases. Focused R&D, we own the IP. It is ours and has been ours for decades. So again, we continue to develop this. And again, with the assessment of new fraud attacks, new fraud vectors, new authentication means, all of these technology defenses and best practices influence how our R&D works. And again, we have an enormous amount of depth and breadth to continue advancing this work to make sure that we stay in front of, fraud and authentication needs. So holistic portfolio, again, we're the world leaders in this space. And we have the ability to strengthen VB capabilities, such as, with synthetic speech. We have a very, this is again, something that has emerged, and we are, ready and prepared before it even has hit the market. So again, a holistic portfolio, it not only works today, it not only works yesterday, but it'll also work tomorrow. And again, I just can't say this enough. It is the best biometric engine on the market. It is the fastest, it is the most accurate, and is consistently rated by our peers and by market analysts as being the industry experts. Also, about 2 years ago, or even 2.5 years ago, we actually expanded our biometric engine to a full deep neural network engine, where now our ability to consume more data in different data types has basically expanded exponentially. So again, not only for today, but also for tomorrow, it is a much more robust platform where we're able to consume more data, different data types, as well as basically to provide improved models, updated algorithms as the other technologies evolve. Ours is evolving at the same space, if not faster. And again, we are able to update these algorithms in the Gatekeeper platform in a very agile manner. Consistent and proven achievement of large business benefits. In terms of our reputation, we have programs where we can give customer referrals of customers in virtually every industry of every size. Again, you don't have to take my word for it, that we reduce customer effort, that we reduce agent AHT, call center efficiencies, fraud reduction, and improving agent satisfaction. We have a long list of customers who can basically testify to our technology and how they've applied it and the success they had. So again, our focus is really on business outcomes and not technology. Technology is obviously what we do. This is our core, but we are very much focused on business outcomes and to cover not just to be a point solution, but to be a platform that can give you robust controls for authentication and fraud detection in every channel. So that being said, I'll hand it back to Eric and see if there's any questions or comments in the chat.
Thanks for that, Tim. That was great. We've heard, or I've heard at least, from so many customers, questions around fraud and authentication within the contact center. It's very top of mind. So hearing your perspective on it was really helpful. We have received some great questions in the chat area, and feel free, anybody, to continue to add some in there. Do you need another glass of water, Tim? I know you did a lot of talking, so I'll give you a chance to catch your breath. But the first question was around, what about if someone is forced to record their voice on a voice memo? Can it be used later for fraud?
So in terms of synthetic speech, it can be used for fraud. But in terms of circumventing biometric controls or to break a voice print, this is technically possible, but it is a very, very significant challenge. To give you an idea, this year alone in 2023, again, with 8 billion verifications, we have had 0 third-party fraud attacks reported to us using synthetic speech technology. So I know this is mega hype in the news and has been going on and on and on. But again, so far across our customer base in 2023, the number is 0 third-party fraud attacks. And this is because of the robustness of this technology. So do keep in mind what you're hearing in the news about using synthetic speech for fraud. Everything is not about breaking voice prints or breaking into voice print accounts where voice prints are used. It is used for other purposes, such as trying to fool parents and grandparents into paying out ransoms because their voice's child has been synthesized. This is what's driving the news cycle. In terms of actually breaking into enterprise-grade biometric platforms, this year, it hasn't happened for a third party.
That's great. Great statistics around that. Thanks for sharing that. Another question is, I know you touched on this, of out-of-the-box reporting. Are there reports that come out of the box like how many people were verified, not verified, detected as a fraud, etc.?
Absolutely. So there's 2 dimensions to this, where pretty much we provide reporting on what is the authentication rate of the engine, what is the volume, and we have, again, a full suite. These are the basic metrics, and we report on them in multiple different ways. So again, what percentage, what is the actual match rate of the engine? What is the mismatch rate, volumes of enrollments, verifications? These are all standard metrics that come out of the box.
That's great. Another question that came up a couple times is if you're an enterprise and you're looking to test out this type of technology or wondering if it's a good fit with your customer base, what would you recommend first steps for them?
So for first steps of applying or using biometric technology, I would say the first thing is reach out to Servion or one of your sales partners. And what we can do is we can put you in contact with somebody from our sales team who will actually show you a live demo where they'll actually demonstrate the technology in real time in front of you. And it'll really help you understand the simplicity of the technology. Again, it is kind of black magic in the background, but again, the deterministic output, again, is just a quick demo will really help you get the ins and outs of how it actually works. And past that point, again, it depends on what the actual situation is. But again, there are many different avenues, either in terms of customer referrals or in terms of depending on the contracting. Again, we can set up obviously contracting has to be there. But again, there are environments where, again, just our demo environment, we can show this to you in real time.
Yep, that's great. And, we often see that it's best to understand what type of calls or interactions you're getting in various channels, and then understand how something like this could be of value, the ROI around it, and things like that. And that's something that both Servion and Nuance can help organizations try to figure out. Another question is if you have an active voice print with one organization, would that be shared with another org who also uses Nuance?
No. So every voice print is specific to the customer, and this is in a complete secure wrapper, not only of our technology, but then there's a second wrapper, which is the Microsoft Azure environment. Every voice print is unique to every customer, and there is no cross-pollination whatsoever.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for that. And then I know you touched on this also, but everyone hears a lot about AI within the contact center, generative AI, as you talked about. How is AI utilized in this solution?
So AI is used extensively in terms of training our models, in terms of developing the core technology, as well as like on an ongoing basis. For example, when we talk about like improving or enhancing voice prints over time, the Gatekeeper engine actually is constantly on the lookout to say, can I improve a voice print? Can I make it match more reliably, more accurately? So again, there is native self-learning built into the biometric platform that is all fundamentally based on AI.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And I know Nuance is a leader within that area and always has been. So I'm sure the technology is very advanced. Another question that came in was around folks that have disabilities. So if someone is calling in or trying to leverage this via one of the channels and they have a disability, for example, Down syndrome, how would that work?
So biometrics is not 100% of customers do not necessarily opt in or use biometrics. So there's always the need to have kind of a secondary process for authentication. Just with, the responsible AI principles that, Microsoft has, we're not forcing anybody to enroll, and we're not doing this covertly. So there's always a certain population or size of the customer base who is basically not opting in to this solution. So for the same thing, for example, like if somebody has Down syndrome or has, specific speech impediments, we're not completely removing the process, if you will. There is always, a second way to authenticate. But what we're trying to do is to make this basically, this exception path as small as possible. So again, we're never closing the door on it. So again, this is kind of business as usual for that.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. One question came in early on into the webinar when you were showing the 3 different colors. The question is what phone software is required to be able to see the color indicators for a biometric review?
So for phone software, it's not actually the actual Gatekeeper solution is not installed on the phone. It would actually be through an SDK and an API that it would be used. So actually, it doesn't matter. It can be any phone, any software. It's a standard API that's delivered to the customer. And this is what's used to interact with the Gatekeeper platform. So it's really device agnostic.
Okay, perfect. No, that's great. One question just came in is, how does this solution work without exposing PII? So how can a thumbprint be identified otherwise, and how can a thumbprint be identified otherwise by an administrator? So I guess it's kind of a 2-part question.
So in terms of exposing PII, the actual audio is hosted within a secure Azure environment, which is PII compliant. So the Gatekeeper technology, the software, as well as like the cloud infrastructure is all PAI compliant. So again, we don't expose it outside of the platform. So again, we're basically in a PAI compliant environment. So this is not really a concern.
Perfect.
We can do things like redaction and like masking. So again, there are even additional like controls that can be layered on top. For example, to do like remove credit cards from audio and things like that. These are more advanced strategies, but the whole environment and architecture is fully PAI compliant.
Perfect. That's great. And I know you touched on this also around an ROI, but what another question that came in is around best practices for fraud strategies. Are there the 3 or 4 that you might recommend to someone?
So in terms of fraud strategy, in terms of applying biometrics for fraud strategy, this is actually the team that I lead here within Nuance, the Fraud Nexus program. And there's a consultation service that comes as a function of your transactional pricing. So you will have a fraud consultant to help you walk you through these specific fraud strategies. I can give general fraud strategies, but it really depends on the use case and what your business is trying to solve, as well as what type of risk your business faces from fraud. It is hugely varied, but the fundamentals of it are basically recognizing individuals who are bad actors and blacklisting them. This is the fundamentals of it. How you identify them, what strategy you take to identify them, really depends on the use case and the risk that your business is facing.
Yep, no, that makes sense. Yeah, not all organizations are the same when it comes around fraud. So you want to make sure you tailor it to your customer base, where you're located in the world, your key metrics. So that makes sense. One of the last questions that came up is, I know you touched on this also, is around omnichannel. So that you mentioned that the solution works on omnichannel. Can you expand a little bit on that?
Sure. So you can think of Gatekeeper is like, it's primarily like the primary use case is contact center, but there are many, many, many other use cases. And think about it as long as you can collect audio, we can authenticate and enroll. It's as simple as that. So any smartphone that has a microphone can be used. Any web, even a laptop microphone, things like this can be used. An IVR, there's really like, it's limitless. To give you even like an ideal, like a more like advanced idea that we're talking about some of our customers with, is actually think of it like a vending machine that hands out brand new iPhones. You walk up to the vending machine, enter your telephone number, authenticate using your voice, and a new iPhone comes out of the vending machine. So again, as long as audio can be collected, there's virtually no limits to the use cases.
That's great. Well, that looks like that was all the questions. So, once again, Tim, thanks so much for taking the time. Also want to thank everyone on the call and the webinar for joining the session. Please feel free to fill out this survey. We'd love to get your feedback so we can always continue to take that into consideration as we roll out other webinars similar to this. And you will also be receiving the PowerPoint and a recording of this afterwards. So thanks again, Tim, and everyone at Nuance Microsoft, and to everyone that joined. I hope you have a great rest of the day. Thank you.